Welcome back to the Searchmetrics Digital Summit. My name is Malte and I'm still your host for today. In a few seconds, we will hear a presentation from Thomas Gruhle, the founder of digital marketing agency Leap, and he will share his learnings from 1,864 A/B tests. I've known Thomas for many years and I've always been impressed by his achievements. And the most impressive one was when he walked 100 kilometers in 24 hours. Something I tried as well twice, but had to abort after like 60 kilometers, unfortunately. Thomas, over to you.
Malte, thanks a lot for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'll never forget those 100 kilometers that we were walking. Now, this thing today is about A/B testing, and the good thing is A/B testing is not like walking 100 kilometers within 24 hours. There's a structured process behind it, and you don't even have to nearly kill yourself in order to achieve it. So, I can promise you it's way easier. You can see myself here. I'm gonna switch off my video cam soon so that we can all focus on the slides. And at the end, once some questions are coming up, I'll switch it on again and then, enjoy and see you in a bit. Right. This is what it's about today, the best of 1,864 A/B tests that we have conducted within the last couple of years. That's our topic. But before we dive in, let me do a short introduction of myself. So I'm Thomas. I'm founder and CEO of the agency Leap. And Leap basically is a online marketing agency based in Berlin. And we basically just do two different things. The one thing is SEO, which means we're driving organic traffic to on-page SEO, off-page. We're optimizing user signals, doing all kind of technical SEO and creating content. And we do that basically within all major European countries with native speakers. And that's basically the one thing. And the second thing is conversion optimization. That's one of our main pillars. We do everything around consulting. We do A/B testing, data analytics with psychologists and this kind of stuff. And we create landing pages and whole websites, whole user journeys. So that's all we do. And we are very much focused on these topics. We're not doing anything else. That's our specialization. At the moment, we have about 60 employees, about 50 clients, most of them in e-commerce. I would say, let's say 70% B2C, and 30% B2B. And last year was our 10-year anniversary, so it's our 11th year now. And today is going to be basically about two things. I wanted to keep this very practically. So I'm sure the second part, the best of more than 1,800 A/B tests, will be very interesting for everyone because that's maybe stuff that you can adapt. However, I also find the first point, the CRO mindset for success, very important because I think it's not enough to just copy A/B tests. And let me start with what a CRO mindset for success is and what I consider as major points. The number one thing is just what I say, what I just said. Do not copy, get inspired. What do I mean? Usually when talking about conversion optimization, I pretty often see a mindset of, we do it the way we think it's right, and we do it the way we always did it in a way, or this kind of, or one sentence that comes up very often is, we know our customers best, we know what they want. Yeah? And what I have to say about this is every single person in this world has a very selective perception of reality and truth. And this perception is, as I say, selective, and in many cases it does not represent what the customers want. And this kind of thinking often leads to hypotheses that do not really drive conversions, that do not really drive improvements on the website and innovation. So that's one thing. Your selective perception and being in your own bubbles is one big problem. And you have heard of the hippo syndrome, listening to the person with the highest position in the room and just doing what the person says. Sounds like some old concept, but still happening in many companies. Most probably in the 4 companies you can see my limbic graphic over there. And of course, this is also a wrong mindset. What we see very often is in Germany, Zalando is being copied, or Amazon, because they are the e-commerce leaders, so they are doing it right. So let's just apply what they do in their checkout, what they do on their product page. Let's just apply it to us. But I also think that's wrong, and it's not leading to long-term success. And then there's one thing, we call it the big orange button syndrome. Someone has read like, I changed my button color to orange and the conversion rate went nuts, went up by 50% or something like that. It's not gonna work, most probably. What's the correct mindset? It is, you should test it. It's the name of a book. I think everyone should have read it. Meaning always, whatever you do on your website, you have to test it first. You cannot just assume that it's going to work, at least for most of the cases. The second point is data cannot lie, and that's very important. An A/B test will tell you whether your experiment is successful or not. It will tell you how much you can rely on the result, and data cannot lie. And I still meet companies from time to time, and quite big ones, where the people say, no, we don't believe these kind of tools. However, to understand the concept of statistical significance, basically that's basic statistics, is very important in order to understand what makes everything successful. What is also important is each A/B test generates new learnings. What I try to say is not every A/B test, not all of our 1,800 A/B tests was successful. So many failed, but we've learned so much out of it in order to make a follow-up test, which then would be successful. So you have to use these A/B test results in order to learn. The second point is, basically, A/B testing is not a one-time thing you do once a year, or a one-time thing that you do before relaunch or after relaunch or redesign. It's a continuous process, and an evolutionary process of improving your website performance. And basically, it goes through a couple of stages. And the first one is always a quantitative and qualitative analysis, where you find out, or where you try to narrow down where you have the biggest problems, where you lose the most customers, and where you lose the most conversions. And the second is basically getting to a hypothesis that is supposed to raise the problem, which is then being solved by the A/B test. The third is creating those variations, designing them, maybe wireframing them, copywriting them. And the fourth is to set up an A/B test in the tool. The fifth is the execution of the test. The sixth is the evaluation and implementation. And this is basically a continuous process, and you do it over and over again until you have 100% conversion rate, which most probably never going to happen. What's very important is there is so many things you can test on a website. However, most brands in Europe will have limited traffic. Your traffic is limiting how much you can test, because you need to get a test statistically significant. And the less traffic you have, the more you need to think about which kind of test will I do first, and which will have to come later at some time. And the proximity to conversion is basically it's the best criteria in order to prioritize what to do first. Data is telling you basically where do you lose the most and where's the potential for uplift the biggest. And the third point is the feasibility and the effort regarding to the setup of an A/B test and regarding to the implementation of the winner. What do I try to say? You wouldn't start testing with something where you probably get a conversion uplift of 3%, however, or let's say 1%. However, afterwards, you would have to invest about 100 days in order to get that thing live. So you also have to prioritize by feasibility and effort. Whatever you analyze, with whichever hypothesis you come up, you have to validate it through heat maps, user feedback, UX research, psychologist insights, and so on. And once you have that, you can rank your problems. You have your first problem, you have your second problem, your third, and you probably have many more. And now it's basically about the whole procedure, because A/B testing is a numbers game. The more A/B tests you do, the more successes you will have when you have a good process behind it. And what do I mean by that? Let's take the first test here. It's the red one. It starts with design. That's the first step in the whole procedure, and then it comes to development and testing and monitoring. So the test is basically starting, and then to evaluation. And you need to set up your workflows in a way so that the next test, the second test here being marked in the second line, is starting already while you're evaluating the result of the first test, which means while the first test is running, you already have to develop your second test, and so on. And companies who really do it effective, and I would say the most successful companies in e-commerce, they are conducting 20, 30 A/B tests per month, maybe even more. And companies such as Amazon do way more. Of course, you know that. Another point, what is important is the objective. You have to aim at the right goals. You can test something and try to improve some micro conversion rate, like your add to carts. You can also test on newsletter subscriptions. You can test basically all the things you can measure. But you need to ask yourself, what are the right goals and what drives most business value? What drives most revenue in the end? What do I mean by that? Look at this example. Let's say we have a website that has only traffic from mobile and desktop. Okay, this one, in this example, we don't have any tablet traffic. Let's say on our mobile site, we have 3 million users. And at the moment, we have a conversion rate of 5%, equaling 150,000 conversions. And now let's say we're conducting an A/B test here and we achieve a 10% uplift. That would mean we would have a new conversion rate of 5.5%. And that's equaling additional conversions of 15,000. Now let's say in desktop I have 300,000 users and I have a conversion rate of 10% at the moment, which is, as you notice, it's double as high as the mobile conversion rate, and you achieve the same kind of uplift. Of course, your conversion rate for desktop is then on 11. However, the additional conversions only equal 3,000 conversions, which means there's basically 3 values when you segment that you have to take into consideration all the time. It's the traffic, it's the conversion rate, and it's the average order value. And whenever you look at segments, and the segment is, for instance, the device, mobile, desktop, tablet, or it might be the sex, or it might be the location of the user, basically you have to calculate the product of those 3 metrics in order to find out how to segment best. One other point, I always say abandon your old beliefs. The usual objection against A/B testing is, oh, I can't do it, my IT is the bottleneck, and I can't do anything without them, and they are so crucial in the process. And what I just want to say in short time, the implementation of an A/B testing tool takes less than 1 hour. An A/B test setup can go down to 0 if you outsource it. And the implementation of a winner, of a successful variation of an A/B test can be 0 if you run the winner through your A/B testing tool. I'm not focusing much on that. I just want to say your IT is definitely not a bottleneck. It's rather the mindset. Another point is the one thing I'm being asked is always the question that comes up most in webinars or when I meet people is, which A/B testing tools shall I use? And I usually say it's not really about the A/B testing tool. It's not that important. And when you look at, when you remember the process that I've told you, that is starting from analysis, going to hypothesis, variation design, A/B test setup, execution, evaluation, and implementation, then this is the significance or basically the weight by the impact on testing success. And what is important is to do a good analysis to create a good hypothesis and to do good variations. The A/B test setup, yes, of course, you need to do it right. Everything needs to work. Q&A needs to be properly. However, 75% of all this is within the first 3 stages. And the majority of the A/B testing tools that you find on the market, they will be able to run most of the tests, just to say it like that. Another point is this one. No matter the conversion goal, industry, or country, A/B testing works everywhere. No matter whether you do e-commerce or you're optimizing on click-outs or on lead generation, B2B, B2C, no matter whether you're in UK, in Germany, in Austria, or in Poland, it works everywhere. So let's come to practice. I want to tell you, or I want to show with you examples of the best A/B tests we have conducted within the last years. And we picked a couple of things where we believe that many can be applied on other websites. Let's start with this one here. You will always see on the right screen the original, so basically the website that was, or the URL that was live before. And on the next slide, you will see what we have changed and why we did it and what happened with it, what the result was. So one thing is, on this page here, we conducted, we analyzed the problem. There were very high exit rates on the shopping basket. When we were thinking about the solution, we came up with 2 things. The one thing is a psychological effect called cheering. To say it short, people like positive feedback, and the more positive feedback we'll get, the more likely we are to continue with what we're doing at the moment. And another thing is the endowment effect. Endowment effect basically means that mine is better than yours, and basically it says that everything that I possess has a higher value than what I don't possess. That's, for instance, why when you sell your old car, where you remember pretty good times having it with that car, with someone else, whatever, then you always want to have more money than someone else wants to give you. And this has a lot to do with the endowment effect. And we basically used both of those effects when we were creating a variation. And what you can see is we changed just one thing. We said, gute Wahl, das ist Ihr Artikel. Good choice, this is your article. Gute Wahl, good choice, that's the thing where we use cheering. Das ist Ihr Artikel, that's your article, that's the endowment effect. And that in the end led to a higher conversion rate of 2.5% and also higher basket value and more revenue. And whenever I show you these results here, they are all statistically significant. Statistically significant means the A/B testing tool you're using is showing a value of at least 95%, which means to a degree of at least 95%, we can trust this result. But sometimes we might have had, I don't know, 95 and sometimes 100. Another thing that is very nice is it's basically kind of like the opposite. Same problem with this client here. This client had also high exit rates on shopping baskets. And there is this endowment effect again that we used. Mine is better than yours, that we just used in the example before. However, here we were triggering loss aversion. And loss aversion basically says that we dislike losses way more than we like gains. This concept we were basically using by saying, Ihr Artikel wurde nicht reserviert. Your article, endowment, was not reserved. Basically meaning you can lose it, and people are they don't want to lose stuff. And basically that thing also worked out pretty good, 3.5%. When you compare this A/B test with the one that I showed you before, you will see they are basically contrary to each other, I would say. Which means is, depending on your target group, the one might work for your target group, but the other one not. But most probably not both together. That's very unlikely. Let's get to another A/B test. We have a client here, and whenever you would go to the checkout and you would leave the basket, then you would get a screen like this. You could log in, you could register yourself for the first time, or you could continue without registering, without making an account. That's the last option here. And as you can see, there's a dot in login. And that's basically, there was a default being set. Users tend to choose the default, and there's many reasons. It's called the default effect. There's many explanations why people like to use a default. It might be cognitive effort. I rather go with the default than making myself cognitive effort and thinking about other options. It might be switching costs even. It might be also loss aversion. I might lose something when I choose from the default another option. Or it might be, okay, I like to follow that recommendation that was being set. And if I prime users to click on login, then this might be a problem here. And we always think it's right in situations like this to let users pick their own way. And what we did is pretty simple. We just removed the default, and the conversion rate went up by 3.5% because many more people would use the last option, ohne Anmeldung, without registering. So this is one thing that I would recommend for most of the checkouts. Highlighting filters is very important. This is important when you have entrances from Google Shopping or from Google AdWords or from let's say other broader campaigns where people come on category pages. Whenever someone is Googling for shoes or buy shoes, and he will land on the category shoes, and he hasn't made an exact choice, most probably he needs to narrow down to the brand, to the kind of material, whether it's big boots or whether it's sneakers or whatever, to his size. In order to make this easy for him, you need to emphasize filters in order to make the usage of navigation easier, in order to reduce cognitive efforts to find the filtering options and the sorting options. And that's what we did here. As you can see, we highlighted that thing, the sorting and filter option, and that's all we did here. This would bring many more users to use these options, and would bring 5% more in conversion rate. Another thing that is very interesting for some clients is when you are having lots of mobile users and you have a product which many users might buy mobile, with just a high amount of mobile users. then you have to imagine a situation like this. Maybe your clients are sitting on the train from getting home from work to their home, and they have like 10 minutes time, and they're browsing your website, and they want to buy something. However, then they have to change the train, and they are not finishing what they just started here. In order to help improving cross-device shopping behavior, it's a very nice thing to let users save their basket to buy later on desktop or to buy later on mobile again. Because many people also, they start the customer journey in mobile, but they don't really want to punch in all the checkout stuff on a mobile phone because it's just not comfy. However, this option is always a very nice thing. In this case, as you can see in the upper left, no, in the upper right corner, it says Warenkorb speichern, save basket. We did that and would drive conversion rate with 7%. So basically a very nice thing to do to give that option. Another thing is to have an accessible burger menu on the website. As you can see on this website here with this client, you can see the burger menu on the left side. And here in Europe, we have everywhere, most persons are right-handed, which means is they touch their smartphone with their right hand and then they use their thumb. And the thumb would usually open the burger menu. However, if it's in the upper left corner, they whether don't even get there if they have short thumbs, short fingers like I do, or they press something else with their hand and they land on a different side, which leads to frustration, which leads to exits. So the solution is pretty easy. Move the burger menu to the right so that people can reach it easily, reduce the motor effort of a person. And in this case here, as you can see, pretty easy change, 5% uplift, just because the ease of use. Another point, pretty small in the picture here, but as you can see, anchoring in an overview page might be an interesting thing, depending very much on your target group. As you know, we can prime people by numbers and by things, by words that we say, and we can basically influence how they will read and how they will interpret other numbers when they have read a higher number before, and it works for prices very good. Let's say when the first product that you see on an overview page is a very expensive product, then all the products the person will see afterwards will appear not that expensive anymore. So what we try to test pretty often here, you can't see it really, I think in the first example, we were at, I don't know, 50, 60 euro on the left product. And in our variation, we put a product at the beginning with, I don't know, 80, 90 euro, something like that, so way higher. And this would basically anchor the user and make him buy more, and make him increase the basket value and even also increase the conversion rate, because the rest of the products that you would see would just not look as expensive anymore. As I say, with all these things, you have to test them and you have to see whether it works with your target group. Many of the things that I show you here are basically using psychological biases. And not every bias is working with every person. It depends on your target group. And that's why it's so important to know limbic types and to know the limbic map. Another thing I want to tell you, risk aversion is a very important thing. Users face a high risk when buying online. And it's basically very important to show them, no, there is no risk here. You cannot lose anything at all. It's super safe. Many people have done it before, and so on. And what we did here is we used the spillover effect to create trust and the law of proximity. And we included such things as free 30-day return. Spillover effect means basically you use the trust of big brands or of something else, in this case MasterCard and Visa, and you place it close, law of proximity. We place it close to your content, and the trust will be partly inherited by yourself. And in this case, we earn a little bit of the trust of MasterCard and Visa, and on top we say, okay, there's a free 30-day return anyways. Yeah? And if you would even communicate, and you can buy via, you can pay by invoice, it would definitely also support this message. In this case, 30% more conversion rate, so also very effective. Another thing is to give a client a positive entry once entering a website. So in this case, this client is asking whether you are a private customer or whether you're a company, and it's asking you whether you want to have all the prices of VAT or not. We used this pop-up here because it was there anyways, and it needed to be there in order to apply the effect of commitment and consistency. Basically, as a person, as a human, we want to be consistent to our actions, which means if we say something, if we promise something, we want to keep it in many cases, because we feel bad if we don't do it. And in this case, we use this by saying, wir freuen uns, dass Sie sich für uns entschieden haben. We are happy that you have decided for us. So we imply that the user already has decided for us. This commitment and consistency effect in this case leads to a conversion rate uplift of 9%. Also, very nice thing. Something else is human interaction. We're not used to use machines. We're not used to sit in front of computers. We are communicating since 10,000 years with other humans. Formulas like this one here are what we call machine-to-human interaction. And that's not learned by a human. So what we try to do is here, we try to create trust through a learned usability, through human-to-human interaction in the end. And we did it by including this guy here. And as you can see, he's kind of chatting with us. He said, hello, I'm Norman. So we give him a name. I'm your consultant. I try to help you finding finding the best heater or whatever. We're using way more here. We're also using cheering. We say something like, oh, you did a very good choice. This is a very good product. And by doing these things here, we could create an uplift of 36% in mobile and 20% in desktop. One more thing, an emphasis on guest order is always important in first view. In this case, you can see you can log in or you can register on the right side as a new client. If you have a guest checkout, then have it above default. In this case, it was there, but not above default. We just integrated it above default, 50% uplift. So super big uplift, super effective, very little effort in implementing the whole thing, and 50% more yearly revenue. Another thing, that's something we just did recently. When doing our analysis and our hypothesis, we were finding something that led to a hypothesis that when we were running it, it would bring a conversion rate of plus 115%. This is not on a micro conversion. This is a macro conversion in an e-commerce shop and in a very big one. That means by finding one problem, we have doubled it. We have basically doubled the conversion rate within one A/B test. So that is far away from normal, yeah? And that's not what you can expect from A/B testing. But we know that some shops have this problem. What if it was your shop? You can just drop me an email, send me your URL, and we'll check whether this is on your website. Now, I tried to give you some mindset here and give you some examples what you can achieve with A/B testing, and hopefully also gave you some ideas. When I talk about A/B testing, I think A/B testing is the most effective method in online marketing because it drives the most revenue. we don't have a client with less than 20% what they do per year. The IT effort is very low, and so on. Yeah, it's all measurable. 100%. It's no guessing or whatsoever, and it's, in my opinion, also the fastest method of driving ROI and also deep insights in the company. And maybe I hope these are some points convincing you to do A/B testing and to be successful with that. And if you guys have questions regarding your website or how we can help you doing A/B testing for you, just drop me a message, drop me an email, drop me a LinkedIn, or write me on Xing or whatever. Yeah, and thank you very much for looking at my presentation. And sorry for my English, I was talking too much German today.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas, for this presentation. Really insightful, and also awesome that you have this offer for people to send you their URL, and then you will check it out. We have a couple of questions in the chat. So one is maybe a very general one. Which factors actually decide whether a test is successful or not?
Whether a test is successful, there's only one thing. A test is successful if it's statistically significant. That's what I said before, 95%. And if there's an uplift, that's your best case. And there's a middle case and there's a worst case. The middle case is you have statistic significance, 95% or above, and it's negative, which means, for instance, it says minus 10%. Okay, what's good about that? Good about it is you learn something. You learn, okay, this bias, this psychological bias, this concept is not working with my target group, but you learn out of it. You learn something out of it, and you can use this to make a follow-up test. And what I want to say is our follow-up tests usually are the most successful ones. The least, or let's say the worst thing is having a test that is not statistically significant, because you cannot do anything, you cannot interpret it, you don't know, is it good, is it bad? And that's the point. I think that's the main point.
Yeah, very interesting point on the follow-up tests, especially. I think that's an important takeaway. Then you mentioned that sometimes like IT resources are a problem, but how do you test if you're in a really large company? It's a very political process to get like IT resources. The IT team is completely booked out for the next 24 months. What would you do to still be able to do some tests? Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah. The one thing is many of those A/B testing tools, they come with a what you see is what you get editor. So it's very easy for persons who don't know how to code to implement a test. When you look at the prioritizing, what was one of my first slides, I said that the feasibility is one point, how you prioritize your hypothesis. What am I doing first? So the thing is, you should start with things that are easily to implement. And those, many of the things that I showed you, they don't require that many skills in A/B testing or that many skills in programming. You can just do them very easily. The most important thing is the hypothesis and the analysis, which you are basing the hypothesis on. So that's the one thing. And when it comes to more complex A/B tests where you need programming, you can also outsource this. That's the thing, because an A/B test is injecting with JavaScript from outside. So in the end, you need your IT resources to implement the thing once, and then someone else who can run an A/B test, who can program an A/B test, can do it from outside without asking your IT guys. And so that's basically possible. And then there's always the last obstacle is, let's say you have finished an A/B test and it has an uplift of 10%. Very nice, 10% more yearly revenue. However, still, many clients have the problem that the development pipeline is so full, yeah, until the next 1 to 10 years that they cannot even implement that. And most A/B testing tools have to offer the possibility to run basically the A/B test for 100% of the users, which means you're not programming anything at all on your website. You just let it run for 100% of the users. It's not that easy to do, because whenever you deploy something, you need to make sure that your 100% that your A/B test for 100% of the people is still working. But it can be done, and we're doing it for our clients pretty often, and they just like it because they don't have to talk with their IT anymore.
That's a very clever hack to get it rolled out to all the people. Yeah, and the last question, also very interesting one, I think. If you start doing structured A/B testing, what kind of uplift can you realistically expect?
Yeah, no, that's a hard one. When you remember my slides about the process, it's how much you can do is very much about the analysis, the hypothesis, and the variations you design or you text. That's 70% of the success factor. And depending on how good you are in these points, how much experience you have, how good your internal stuff is, or how good your agency is, that's basically deciding over whether it works. It's not what is not important is whether it's Optimizely, or whether you use Google Optimize or Visual Website Optimizer or whatsoever. They don't like to hear that, yeah, but in the end, it's the point. Important is the stuff before. What I can say is, with our clients, we make an average of 20% conversion uplift per year. That's the average, which means there's many clients above. And usually it's very interesting, because when we talk to clients and they ask, okay, how much can I expect? And we say, okay, 20% at least. And they will be like, what? 20% on the yearly revenue? Then we say, yes, 20% of the yearly revenue. So with A/B testing, you can do quite a lot, which is harder with other marketing channels. But it depends pretty much on the skill set. And there are companies who do it very well, with lots of experience, that are doing it since years. Yeah? Amazon is doing it very well, or there are some big e-commerce companies in Germany. But I think the most companies unfortunately struggle because they don't get a structured process. They don't get the speed. Yeah, because when I only do one A/B test per month, I'm not going to do the 20% per year, unless I have the 110% uplift test, but I wouldn't bet on it. So most companies struggle over there, and that's the things you need to solve in order to be successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think we are nearing the end of our time limit, so that's it for questions. As I said, thank you for this really insightful presentation. I think everybody should pick you up on your offer to check out some of their pages. And yeah, I would say over and out from my end. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day and nice conference.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.